Hello and welcome back to the NFL DFS slate preview for week 16. We are going to go over the top wide receiver and running back matchups for this upcoming week. Now, before we get into it, I am Tyler Weeman, your host at FlatTyler83 on Twitter and your DFS sites. Come join us at Line Star. It is only $39.99 per month. Gets you access to all we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all for one low price. Now, let's dive in and see what we got here on this beautiful slate. I will go to the Fanduel one because it does pop up this last game, so we can talk about that as well. It just makes it so we can talk about both slates, the Draftkings, Yahoo, Fanduel, all in one. It looks like we do have a very exciting slate, though. We got 12 games and a lot to cover, and no one game in particular really standing out. There's, 4 or 5 games that look real fun. Now, let's dive in, go position by position. We're going to go running back and wide receiver 1 today and dive into those spots. I chose the last 5 games as the time frame for this week to go over. Last week we went over last 10, so let's go back to a little shorter time, when we're a little bit later into this season. There's just more changes from these teams, so I really do like to examine both last 5, last 10, last 2 even, but I just don't really give that too much credit. Just because it's such a small sample size. But toggling through, all the different time frames definitely gives you a little bit of an idea of who these teams are. Now let's dive in, starting with the best matchup on the slate for running back, Jahmyr Gibbs. Now this is an absolutely amazing spot for Jahmyr. So the big news here is David Montgomery is out. So Jahmyr is going to get, the lion's share of the workload here. Now, I still expect them to limit Gibbs a little bit. I would expect them to alternate some other backs in, but look what they just did against Buffalo. He had 7 targets, so 83 receiving yards to go along with 8 carries for 31 yards and 2 touchdowns. The big thing here is, what have the Bears done defensively versus running back lately? Over the last 4, they're allowing 130.3 rushing yards per game, 1.5 touchdowns, and then, just to top it off, another 40 or 39 yards receiving. They're giving up 27.4 fantasy points per game to the running back spot. Then you add in the fact that you have an elite talent in Jahmyr Gibbs, and it starts to look super interesting. Possible higher workload with no David Montgomery, and Gibbs is pretty much set to be super chalky, but probably a super necessary piece to your DFS game next week. Or if you're in your season long or best ball teams, you're going to be really happy you had Gibbs. Next, we got Jerome Ford. Unfortunately, Chubb did get hurt last week, so Ford is thrust back into the RB1 spot here in Cleveland, and it's a good spot. The Bengals are giving it up, more so through the air than the ground. My biggest worry here for Jerome Ford this week is the fact that it is not going to be Jameis Winston at quarterback, and it is going to be DTR. I think that hurts the offense as a whole and makes it probably a little hard for Jerome Ford to really get going. I would expect their passing game to look more like it did in this first 6 weeks than the last, 6 weeks or so. So we have seen some more explosive plays out of Ford lately, and I think those are going to be a little bit harder to come by with DTR, just because defenses don't have to worry about that downfield passing threat as much with him on the field. So that's my worry about it. But let's look at this spot versus Cincinnati. They're allowing 72 yards a game on the ground, or 92 yards yards per game on the ground to the running back, but 5.8 receptions and 63 yards receiving and 1.3 touchdowns. So it is a very good spot for a proficient pass catching RB like Jerome Ford is. If the Cleveland Browns dump it off to Ford, he could definitely crush. I am a little bit concerned with that quarterback change, though. But all in all, Ford's in a decent spot. Next, we got Chuba Hubbard. 30th ranked Arizona over the last 5. Hubbard is in a great spot to dominate. Last week, he had a tough time. The Panthers got down early to the Cowboys, and Hubbard just couldn't really get it going. He had 10 carries for 32 yards, 4 receptions for 17 yards, and that'll do it. But he is now in a pretty good spot here versus Arizona. Arizona's given up yards on the ground, 95.8 per week over the last 4, and then 42.5 receiving yards over the last 4. We know that Hubbard is used in both parts of the game. The only issue here with that Cardinals defense is the fact that they're only allowing 0.5 touchdowns to the running back. So they're giving up some yards, they're giving up receptions, but they have been good about keeping people out of the end zone. So I think what happens this week with Hubbard is if he's able to get in the end zone, he likely does well. And it's a score you'll want for your DFS or season long or best ball leagues. All in all, I like me some Hubbard this week, and I don't mind playing him. Next, we got Breece Hall, the New York Jets versus Los Angeles Rams. Breece is in a good spot. If we look at the data here, it's a plus receiving matchup. It is a plus matchup on the ground, but slightly negative in the touchdown category over the last 5 games. Now, looking what the Rams have done stopping the run lately. They've allowed 116.5 rushing yards per game to the running back, 4.3 receptions, 36 receiving yards per game, and 0.8 touchdowns. Breece Hall is an absolute beast, has game-breaking ability. He is, dealing with a little bit of a nagging knee injury that he's had over the last couple weeks, and it does look like they limited him a little bit last week. So that's one thing to think about this coming week, and to make sure you watch some practice. Just watch out for practice news. If he is a full go in practice, I would expect his snap counts, workload, all of that to pick back up. And if he sees the workload, he's in a great spot, and he has some game-breaking ability. So I don't mind going there. And lastly, we have James Cook versus the Patriots, who are 27th versus the running back. This is a great spot for James Cook. The only issue with James Cook is, he's got to do the work off like 15 touches. He is not one of the backs in this league that's going to get 20 plus touches, so it does limit upside a little bit, and he's got to be pretty efficient with his touches. But teams have been able to be efficient on this season versus the Patriots, allowing 113 yards a game, 0.9 touchdowns per game, but over the last 4, they have been much tougher. 103.8 rush yards per game and 0.5 touchdowns per game. I don't mind sprinkling in some Cook, but I do think his price is a little bit high on Fanduel at 8.7K when we got some other value spots and we have Jahmyr Gibbs there. So that will do it for the running back spot. Now let's get over to the wide receiver spot. Now this one might be a little bit long because I have some other research stuff I'm going to drop on you guys today because of the scenarios for these wide receivers we're going to go through. All right, top wide receiver matchup, Jakobi Meyers versus the Jags. We have been picking on the Jags all year long, and no difference this week. Meyers is just in an absolute slam spot. Him, Brock Bowers, one of them is pretty much guaranteed to go off in this slate. And to be honest, I might just say I'm going to have one of those guys in every one of my lineups this week. I think the likelihood of one of them getting there is high, and Meyers has been a beast this season, keeps getting it done. He's an exceptional wide receiver, and then the Jags have allowed 215.3 receiving yards per game, 13.5 receptions to the wide receiver over the last 4, and 1.5 touchdowns per game. That ranks 32nd in the league. He is in a smash spot. Give me some Jakobi this week, and let's move it on. Next, we got Deebo Samuel. This is partly why we're going to do some extra research. I'm going to talk through it now. We'll touch back on Deebo in or the 49ers in a second. But Deebo Samuel technically, is still their wide receiver 1. Now, the issue is look what he's done lately. Absolutely nothing. He got 7 targets. He dropped a couple balls, only 3 for 16, got a couple carries, didn't do too much with it. And that's kind of been his story lately. So we got a spot versus the Dolphins, which is a decent one. However, I don't know if we can necessarily trust Deebo Samuel. And to me, it looks like Jauan Jennings is the true number 1 in this offense now. I will show you why in a second. But if you put Jauan Jennings in here, would happily oblige with that being a good spot. All in all, over the last 4 weeks, the Dolphins are 16th opponent ranked wise, allowing 137.5 receiving yards per game, 1.3 touchdowns. It is the touchdown number that's really helping them to show that it is a good spot. Next, we got DeMario Douglas of the Patriots versus the Buffalo Bills. The Bills have been good all season long versus the wide receiver, except for lately. They have started giving it up. 192.8 receiving yards over the last 4 per week to the wide receiver, 1.5 touchdowns, 15 receptions. That is opponent ranked 30th. Now, the Bills secondary has been good all season. I think the Pats have some plays that could be some interesting here, but it is not necessarily DeMar Douglas as the number 1. He does have, a lot of targets going his way, but he's not playing the most snaps, and he's moved, around the formation in the slot a lot, just doesn't play out wide, so he's not your typical WR1. This spot we will also dig into a little bit more, but just to let you know, the Bills do present a decent matchup here. And next we got Cooper Kupp versus the good old Jets. So Jets, who have typically been an extremely good pass D over the last couple of years, have really fallen off. They're allowing 202.3 yards per game to the wide receiver, 1 touchdown, good for 28th. And it's a very interesting spot. I like me some Cooper Kupp. You could also say that Puka is the number 1 here, and those interchangeable. The WR2 in this matchup is also great. So both Puka and Cooper Kupp look extremely well. And this is another situation I'm going to dig into a little bit closer. And lastly, we got Garrett Wilson. Look, it is... we talked about it last week. Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams are 1A, 1B. Both are 1s. I don't want to say one of them is a 2 because they both demand big-time target share. Both are on the field a ton. Kind of like Cooper Kupp and Puka. I mean, it's 1A, 1B. Both of them are good in a good spot. Both of them are going to have chances in this matchup throughout the game. Garrett Wilson's in a good spot. Don't mind some Garrett Wilson. And it's a great little mini correlation. Garrett Wilson or Davante Adams with Cooper Kupp and Puka coming back. Definitely a good spot here. Now, I said I want to do some extra little research for you guys, and that is because the WR1 versus WR2 situation. So right here, I have the San Francisco snaps. Little snap tab here we have, and we can go through some of the data. The reason I say that Jauan Jennings is now the wide receiver 1 and not Deebo Samuel is 1, snap count. Over the last 4 weeks, 90% snap rate for Jauan Jennings, 76 for Deebo Samuel. But going further into that, if you go to target per snap, Jennings is also leading the team there. So not only does he have the most snaps on the team, he is also leading the team in targets per snap. So I think we have a new wide receiver one in San Francisco without Brandon Ayuk and Deebo unfortunately struggling. Now, if we go to New England, similar thing here. Kayshon Boutte, actually 93% of the snaps. So he's on the field and out wide way more than any of the other wide receivers. But his target per snap is down. DeMario Douglas does get the most targets per snap. So he is kind of the wide receiver one, but not on the field enough to be a true wide receiver one. New England kind of changes out all these guys. There's no true alpha in there. But take this what you will, because if you want to put Boutte in that one wide receiver spot, say he has a great matchup, it absolutely makes sense. Next, I'll do the Jets real quick. Look, over the last 4 weeks, we'll just do last week for the Jets. Garrett Wilson, 98% of the snaps, 93% for Davante Adams. But Davante Adams had way bigger of a snap share. If we do it for the last 4 weeks, Davante Adams still has the bigger snap share. He plays less snaps, but when he's on the field, he's looked at a little bit more than Garrett Wilson. Just Garrett Wilson's on the field a little bit more. And lastly, let's get to the Los Angeles Rams. All right, so over the last 4 weeks, Kupp has played 231 snaps. Puka, 204. So the snap share, or the higher snap rate, does go to Cooper Kupp. But if we look at the target per snap, Cooper Kupp is at 0.12 targets per snap, where Puka is at 0.21. So I kind of think that Puka is the true alpha in this offense now. That snap target per snap is extremely high, and I would rather him as the one, but it's really another 1A, 1B situation. Both these guys can excel. They both have a great matchup. Do with that information which you will, but I just wanted to show you another way that we can use LionStar to research coming into the next week. You guys have a great week, and I'll be back more later this week with more NFL DFS content. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Helps us a ton. I'll see you guys later. Peace.